Hey beautiful people, this particular video is about transformation design and execution. And part of the reason why I picked this topic and why I think it's important is that every initiative that we have within organizations requires a certain amount of transformation, and it definitely requires execution. And as you know, I talk about the execution layer and I talk about building execution capacity, but I want to talk about it in the context of transformation because I think it'll help you see how they're tied together and how to think differently about transformation initiatives that you may be working on or planning or have underway. I'm Jennifer Kenny. I'm the best-selling author of The Innovation Mindset and award-winning author of 100% Capacity. And what I do is I help teams build capacity for execution, help teams build capacity for strategy, and help teams in highly complex, cross-functional, technical and scientific environments really improve their ability to be able to execute and deliver value. And one of the ways that I do that I found to be incredibly effective over the years, and I've built frameworks about it and written books about it and I talk about it and do a lot of public speaking around it, is the idea that we don't do transformation, that we don't roll out transformation. And, I've snidely mentioned to people that I think the only thing that we should roll out is a carpet. But I believe that transformations should be designed from mindset to method to frameworks. And that if we can start thinking about transformation not as something that has to do with communication primarily, but something that has to do with new capacity building inside our organization, then what we're doing is we are using the execution capacity that we need to build to do the transformation to also help other people build that capacity themselves. So I want to show you how to be able to architect execution into your change initiatives so that you are effectively practicing what you're preaching. A transformation strategy is never going to be enough. And there are some pretty important conversations that can actually power real change inside your org. And as you start thinking about how you do the design of your transformation, it's important to remember that the success of your transformation is going to be largely determined by your ability to be able to execute on it. And strategy without execution is really just a dream. And we fall into those sort of myths or potholes quite regularly, and we start thinking about transformation and execution as things that we can talk about without necessarily practicing, or that we can roll out without actually having to build new capacities and new practices. So let's talk about executional architecture for transformation. As you start thinking about transformation, start thinking about it not as, I rudely refer to it as moving the decks on the Titanic. Many times when people start off with a transformation, what they will look at is they will look at the org and they will end up doing a reorg, and they will consider the reorg to be a huge part of their transformation, and sometimes the reorg is the transformation. I think it's realistic at this point in our hopefully gaining of more wisdom around change and around transformation and around execution and around strategy that we recognize that transformation really only happens when people start building new practices and new capacities. So if you think about any kind of transformation that you've had in your life, whether you've moved yourself from someone who doesn't have a lot of friends to someone who transformed themselves and is able to build deep, wonderful personal relationships with people, to somebody who is not very effective at advocating for themselves, and you've transformed yourself into somebody who is able to advocate for themselves and has gotten promoted a couple of times in the last few years. Or you've transformed yourself into someone who's really bad with money and had ran up a bunch of credit card debt, to someone who actually manages their money and lives within their means and lives within their budget, which is growing because they're getting promoted, and also is able to manage their money effectively. So whatever kind of transformation you've gone through, whether it's a physical, personal transformation around, diet and exercise, or health and extreme sports, or whether it's through learning that you've done, all of them can be attributed to practices. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll realize that the reason why the person that I was and the person that I am today seem almost like two different people is because I went through the process of building new practices for myself. I applied them into my life. I practiced them over a long period of time, and I began to see some amazing impacts. And as I practiced them more, I saw even more amazing impact. So thinking that transformation has to do with reorg and communication is really sticking our heads in the sand, because personally we know that transformation has to do with new practices, new behaviors, new learning, and with our ability to be able to be really honest with ourselves around what it is we need to be doing differently, how it is we need to be thinking about things differently, and what results we're really looking for. So executional architecture for transformation has to center itself in new practices. As we start rethinking what it means to do transformation and build new practices into organizations, we need to start getting really clever about what kind of practices are we talking about. Are we talking about people's ability to be able to build trust with each other? Are we talking about people's ability to be able to not always need to be right? Are we talking about people's ability to be able to innovate? Are we talking about people's ability to be able to execute? Is our standard for knowing whether or not our transformation is successful that we move people closer to being a high-functioning team or a high-performing team? Like, what does it really mean for us to start thinking about what are our conditions of satisfaction? What will satisfy us and we really be able to celebrate and pat ourselves on the back, which I think is actually a good thing sometimes, when we start thinking about, what does transformation actually look like? As we also start thinking about how we design transformation, we tend to design transformation, particularly if we're doing a reorg and we think that's transformation, we tend to design it as the teams are now working together. We've now moved the new people into the new places. We've now got all the payroll stuff sorted out, and we've now worked with HR to make sure all that happens. We've now announced that the org knows what's going on, and we kind of do a declaration of completion on our transformation based on having had all of that stuff happen. But what we're missing the hugely important conversations around alignment, around trust building, and around satisfaction for the purpose of the transformation in the first place. Most transformations are designed to help people be more efficient, more effective, have less waste, have more innovation. And if we don't understand that that's what we're going about, and we don't introduce new practices that help us do that, then we're deluding ourselves if we think that's actually transformation. The other thing that I found to be super important when we start thinking about transformation design is that we really need to look at execution networks and not org charts. When people start doing transformation and it begins with an org chart change, I really look at it as, shuffling the deck chairs around on the Titanic, because in reality, if we're not building new practices and we're not building new understanding and we're not building shared language, we're really not doing a transformation. And one of the most important things around understanding what you're impacting is to understand what I refer to as the execution layer. What are the networks that we are going to impact as we look to transform people's capability and increase their capacity to be able to add value and do amazing work? And execution networks are networks of commitments that operate across an organization that, if we design for them well and effectively, we are in essence allowing for transformation to be able to happen. We're building the keys to transformation, the DNA of transformation into the organization, and we'll find that people actually start creating transformations themselves in small areas across the org once they understand how to really make execution happen. We also want to be able to have metrics that measure momentum, and metrics that give us some sense of anticipation of what it is that's going to, some predictive capability in our metrics. One of the ways to do that most effectively in terms of what are we looking to impact and what would we consider to be a successful transformation is to really look at what's the capacity that we're building in-house for ourselves to allow us to be able to be more effective in what it is we do and what it is we deliver. And the most important thing for me in that is their practices that we're looking to build. Are the practices around transformation, execution, innovation? Are they practices will help people build that on a sustainable basis? Are there technologies that can support that and allow people to be able to do it more effectively? Are we creating a kernel within our org that will impact others and will continue to grow even after we're gone? So as we start thinking about transformation design and execution, really encourage you to look at what do you mean by transformation? What results are you looking to get? How are you going to measure it? What are some of the predictive metrics that you can put in place? What capacity are you, new capacities are you building for people? And as you do that, I have a paper that I think will help you. It's called Execution by Design. And execution by design actually is a very powerful way of doing transformation if you harness it for that. And it's available on my website as a free resource. You can download it from there. It's at www.jenniferkenny.com/execution. It's also down below in the link below, and you can get it from there. I'd love to know what you think about it. I'd love to know what you think about my thinking around transformation design and execution and whether or not this has been helpful for you. Let me know, and as you go through the process, I wish you the best of luck. Take care.